about that. I thought you could all hear me. Again, as Bill said, we thank you all for being here, for tuning in, for participating. I'm Kevin Diaz from WHCP, Cambridge Community Radio, and I'll be asking the questions tonight. Just one note to keep in mind, all the candidates have been provided the potential questions in advance to prepare for this forum so that they can provide the most thoughtful and complete answers that they have. The rules are as follows. Each candidate gets a 2-minute opening statement and then 2 minutes to answer each question, and then there'll be 2-minute closing statements at the end. And so, with no further ado, by prior agreement, Mike Detmer will start us off with the first statement.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mike Detmer. Thanks for coming. Thanks to the organizers. I was lucky enough to move to Dorchester County when I was 3 on Garden of Eden Road, right on the banks of the Choptank. Some of my fondest memories there. Playing in the sand between the tidal pool and the beautiful Choptank River. I went to school here in Dorchester County. I went to St. Clair for kindergarten. I just bumped into my kindergarten teacher at Music on the Nanticoke the other night. It was fun reminiscing. I graduated from CSD 25 years ago tomorrow. So let's go Vikings. And even more so, let's go class of 97. I left here, went to college. I enlisted in the Marine Reserves. In 2004, I was called up. I went to serve in Iraq. I was a Marine combat engineer. I was attached to 3rd Battalion 1st Marines, and I had the honor and the privilege of being a participant with them in the Battle of Fallujah, a very large urban battle, very dangerous, and I'm very grateful to God that he brought me through. I believe it was a miracle that it happened, and I was grateful to come back to this beautiful place. I've looked for a place to go, and the only place that I could go is to come back home. And I came to Dorchester, started a life since. I've done news, I've done education, education leadership, some small business, and then I've gone back to news again. And it's been quite an experience. I've politically had the chance to be involved in the Board of Elections for 7 years, started as a substitute through my, I believe, organizational leadership, ended up as a president, stepped down to pursue this. I was on the Republican Central Committee. So I think just opening statement, I'm looking forward to these questions so much. I've been so excited, and I'm really, really grateful for this opportunity to be up here. And I'm really grateful for this chance. This slate of voters is great up here for everybody, but this slate of voters up here, it's or candidates, that is, it's great that the voters have a choice. And I hope tonight to show you that I am that choice.
Thanks, Mr. Detmer. Mr. Layton is next.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is William Layton. For those of you that don't know me, my wife Jennifer and I own and operate Layton's Chance Winery. I'm proud to say that our family-owned winery, which we built from the ground up, is now one of the largest in the state, producing over 18,000 gallons of wine each year, produced from Dorchester-grown grapes, strawberries, and watermelon. I grew up here in Dorchester County. I went to Vienna Elementary, North Dorchester Middle, and North Dorchester High. Then I left looking for greener pastures. I was gone for 8 years. But in that time, I learned that there is no place like Dorchester. There's nowhere else that I wanted to raise my kids and nowhere else that I wanted to live my life as part of a small community. I was fortunate because I had my family farm to come back to. So many people don't have that option. Dorchester has steadily lost businesses and jobs over the last 40 years. New businesses coming in are not enough to offset this loss. There are not enough good jobs in Dorchester County to draw and keep people here. We need leadership that will guide the county into the future. A county is a business. Dorchester County is a business with over 600 direct and indirect employees. Businesses cannot survive without strong leadership. Right now, our county is adrift. Our county council is not united on any single vision, and we have no strong county manager to guide our employees. I'll show over the next 90 minutes that I have the experience, the vision, and the skills to help give this county direction and leadership for the future. My jobs, my positions, and my experiences have all prepared me to take this office from day one and help to lead our county into a new prosperous future. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Layton. If you can pass the mic down to Mr. Ashraf, please.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out. My name is Zia Ashraf, and as you can see, I'm one of the youngest member running for this race. I have been in Dorchester County for the past 7 years, and my family has been running the business here in Hurlock for about 25 years now, right across of the Amic plant. The reason I have decided to run for this race, especially because I have been involved here in politics back for the past 4 years, starting with the Hogan campaign here on the Eastern Shore. And I feel we need more kind of a fresh and young mandate for the county council that can be up to date with the 21st century needs and the vision that can move forward this county in a strong leadership and a future that would be beneficial to our residents here in the county. So that is why in the next 90 minutes, as you will be able to see my vision, my skills that I have attained so far through my education and my experiences with my involvement here on the politics on the Eastern Shore, that give you an idea what vision I have for the Dorchester County. Thanks again for coming out.
Thank you. Mr. Beverly is next.
How you doing, folks? My name's David Beverly. I'm the oldest of 7 children that all reside here in Dorchester County. Dorchester County is a beautiful place. It's very unique in its agricultural heritage and its economy. It's my belief that we can create a more sustainable economy with what we already have here today instead of looking at elsewhere. The reason why I'm running for county council is because I believe that we are living in some very interesting times, and it's very important that we elect local leaders that truly understand the U.S. and state constitution. And when the time comes to do so, to stand with the residents and do what is right in accordance to what our governing documents say and what we take an oath to. It's my hope that the residents will find value in that, and in all forms of government, elect local leaders that go along those lines. I would also like to say that I've been in public service for the past 10 years, working in fire and EMS here in the state of Maryland and here locally on Maryland's Eastern Shore. And it has really given me insight of all walks of life and the people that I would be representing in government. I have great empathy for the people, and I hope to be their next representative for Dorchester County District 5.
Thank you. Mr. Bradshaw.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tom Bradshaw. I am a lifelong resident of the county and didn't venture very far, unlike Mr. Detmer and Mr. Layton. And Mr. Detmer, I wish to thank you for your service to our country. It's greatly appreciated. I have been in public service before. I served 8 years previously on the county council, and like some others, I too am disappointed in the direction that this county has gone. As my wife would tell you, literally heartbroken over progress that was made only to be stopped. And as a lifelong resident of this county, I have a heart for this county and a heart to serve. And it is my honor and privilege again to run for this office and hope to be your next elected representative for District 5 and the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. And you'll get the first question tonight, which is we'd like to ask you to describe 3 ways to increase revenues for the county that you would like to implement during the next 4 years.
Well, one of the ways that we can do this is to look to see what kind of tax incentives that we can give to businesses to encourage them to expand and hire more employees, what kind of incentives we can give to attract manufacturing with the upcoming waterfront development on the old hospital property, the Sailwinds area, work with CWI in that development and explore ways to improve the quality of life for the citizens of this county and make it so that others would like to move here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Detmer.
So 3 ways to increase revenue for the county. One, I would say, is to have property value continue to go up, to build more houses, to encourage business to come, to encourage tourism to come. I would say we also probably, as part of good fiscal stewardship, we need to really evaluate our fees and services. Maybe fees need to go up, maybe they need to go down. But for impact fees, if you're building a large development, it is going to have an impact on infrastructure, on public safety services, and on schools, to just to name a few. So to evaluate what maybe fees need to go up, maybe they need to go down. And also, I know this will be touched on again, but outside revenue that could come from state and federal funding is being allocated, it's being given out. And I don't know that that falls under the typical definition of revenue. I'd love to get it from the private sector. I'm a conservative Republican, but that's the reality we live in now as well. So definitely need to keep the, instead of raising any property taxes, just expand the property tax base and have people be able to improve their houses, have the value of their neighborhoods go up as they live there, as they raise their families there. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Layton, you're next.
Thank you. So we start out, of course, as everybody has said, we cannot raise taxes here. Dorchester is already a highly taxed county. The most viable thing that we really need to do is increase our tax base. We need to bring more businesses in that bring more people in. And we've got a beautiful county. We've got a county that people love to visit, and we need to make it a county that people want to live in. Being business friendly, increasing the businesses, increasing tourism. And then, looking at a third way, like Mike said, it's not ideal, but being able to take advantage of state and federal grants, those grants are there. Somebody is going to get that money, and we need to make sure that it's us. So those are what
Thank you. Pass the mic down to Mr. Ashraf, please. He's next up.
I think the first thing we can do is, and it's more valuable thing for us here in the county, is we should promote tourism. I think we should take advantage of Ocean City traffic that just passes through our corridor right here. I think if we do a good job in advertising tourism, I think that's going to be a big helpful for the county. Then also widening or diversifying our workforce. Right now, we only have agriculture and small business driven economy here, but maybe looking into diversify our workforce that could also help bring some revenue. And then, like Mr. Layton said, maybe working on those federal and state grants. I think that would be helpful because somebody has to get that money. So I think applying for those grants would be helpful for the county.
Thank you. Mr. Beverly.
I would have to say that when it comes to increasing revenue here in the county, I would personally say that I'm more supporter of small businesses. What makes Dorchester County really unique is some of our small businesses have been here over 80 to 90 years, and I really would like to support small agribusiness. The small 100-acre farms or less, where they create a really high quality product, is very popular in the major metropolitan areas, which we are very close to the farm to table aspect. I would also say, though, when it comes to getting grants, which is important, I think it's important that the people remember that grants always have ties to them that have certain requirements that sometimes might not go well with the values of the Dorchester County residents.
Okay, hold on to that mic, Mr. Beverly, because you're right. You get first crack at the next question. The county has received in excess of $3 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds, that's ARPA funds, and will soon be getting an additional distribution for a similar amount. Where do you propose we spend or allocate that money?
In my opinion, I would say there's three spots that I think we should allocate it to, which would be fire and EMS, the sheriff's office, and somehow finding a way to get universal broadband across the county. As many people here know or watching, not having internet coverage or being able to get internet at your home these days is very, it's not feasible to be able to even apply for a job, unfortunately, these days. So it's my hope that we could somehow allocate these funds to those three resources that were really used very much so during the pandemic.
Thank you. Mr. Bradshaw.
Well, the county has already given $600,000 each to Chop Tank Electric and Bay Country Communications for last mile fiber internet access. I would like to allocate some of those funds towards getting ditches cleared and pipes replaced in problem areas for better drainage, give incentives and bonuses to those workers who were actually on the front lines during the COVID pandemic shutdown, and small nonprofits and museums that are important for the heritage tourism industry in the county that lost revenue because of that shutdown, and the health department for mental health services.
Thank you. Mr. Detmer.
The answer to this problem is why there's 5 of us on stage here, and it's going to start to unravel the mystery as we go through these series of answers. The answer is that department heads should already have a list of what's needed. The fact that they don't have a list of what they need, then what they want and what they would wish for is unacceptable. These are things that should exist already. How can we be ready for opportunity? How can we be ready for challenge? Who doesn't have a prioritized list of what they're looking for if they get a windfall of why aren't these department heads being instructed to look to the future? That's what there's a dearth of here. There's a dearth of that vision and leadership. And, that should be really the answer. It shouldn't be coming from the people here at this table. It should be coming from the experts in the field, literally in the field. You ask for specifics. I would say this. I would say we need to listen to things that have been said publicly, like law enforcement leaders that have publicly expressed interest in a central booking. Like we're here having this law enforcement crisis with keeping officers on the streets. Let's invest some of this ARPA money into creating a central booking process where the court commissioner can field and corrections personnel can get officers, instead of having to sit and fill out arrest paperwork, literally put them back out on the street, hopefully preventing crime. Another great example of something that I would love to hear from department heads about is, and I heard from a former department head about this, is a spin ditcher that they got that spun out all 650 miles of county roads in 1 year. 1 man, 1 year. It'd be like a miracle. Where are these solutions? Where are these purchases that we need to make? I think that's what we need to look to. I also think we need to look for other ways to make this money go forward and to make it invested in the future, is to do things that will qualify us for other money. If we spend this and it goes out the door, we never see it again. But if we pay for a study that justifies the shoreline repair that we need, or that can justify, hey, we've got 15 road guys. We used to have 50. So we need some, federal infrastructure money to clean out these ditches for people. We need to use some of this money to quantify where is the broadband? Where is their terrible cell service? Show me on a GIS map. That's what this money should be going towards.
Thank you. Mr. Layton.
So this is one-time use money. While it'd be great to be able to use it to increase the number of law enforcement officials out there, teachers out there, it's not something we can count on time and time again. It's one-time use. So, a few things I think are important that we ought to be looking at. Ambulance equipment. This is a big county. It takes a long time to get an ambulance out somewhere. And I have heard from a number of people that our ambulance equipment is not up to par. They need the most current equipment in those ambulances, so when they get out, they can make sure that they are taking care of people in the time it takes to get out to them and get back to a hospital. School security equipment should be at the top of our list right now. It is scary what is going on in schools, and making sure that schools are as safe and secure as they can be is something that really, really needs to be looked at. And I'll agree with everybody about broadband. I think we've seen in the last 2 years that it is imperative that everybody be connected. It is a core utility that everybody needs. We use it for personal, we use it for personal business, we use it for business. Almost everything we do is on a computer anymore, and making sure that every person has that access is just paramount.
Thank you. Let's get that microphone over to Mr. Ashraf, please.
I think the first need for us as a county district 5 is like everyone said, broadband internet, because like I said earlier, 21st century need, it's an everyday need for both businesses and school for the students. I think we can also use that money for improving local infrastructure and ditches, and also we can use that money for incentivizing bonuses for EMS and local law enforcement. I think that would be another grateful use for that money.
Thank you, Mr. Ashraf, and we'll give you a first crack at the next one. What are your thoughts on the charter amendments being pursued by the Dorchester Charter Change Commission regarding transparency, including online and video access to council meetings?
I fully support charter amendments. I think it's time to amend our charter, especially that's how we're going to engage more citizens with the county council, and it's more feasible and I think more comfortable for everyone who cannot come out here in Cambridge for county council meeting. I think having those meeting online would be helpful, and having online record would be helpful for the citizens of this district if they need to look back at something and they want to talk about or have some personal comments about those particular issues, and they want to reach out to their local legislator. I think that would be helpful, and I fully support that amendment.
Thank you. Mr. Beverly, you're next.
I would have to be in agreement. I support the amendment also. It's unfortunate that we're not doing it already. With technology these days, it's very feasible to do, and many counties throughout the state already do it. And it would make the residents, in my opinion, feel more comfortable if we're more transparent.
Thank you. Mr. Bradshaw.
Well, I wholeheartedly support the charter amendment, and I have signed a petition to get it on the ballot in November. Interestingly enough, during my first term, the meetings were actually broadcast, and then the camera broke and the infrastructure there to support it was outdated. The next council that I served on actually worked with Bay Country to put infrastructure in place, and it was about to be replaced and the camera set up so that the meetings could be broadcast. And then this sitting council took over, and they did not see the need to have these meetings broadcast. Let's face it, everybody cannot get to Cambridge to get to the meeting. You know, you come home from work, you're sweaty, you're tired, but you're interested in what's going on. So you can go to the computer and flip it on and sit there and watch and listen to what's going on. If I am fortunate enough to get back in office, I would tell you that infrastructure would be finished out, the camera would be put in place, the meetings would be broadcast, and I would work to get the county website updated, and any pertinent documents, bar personnel or other legal matters pending, documents that the public couldn't be privy to at the time, I would make sure that those documents were uploaded on the computer so that people had access to see what the council is actually basing their decisions upon.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. Mr. Detmer.
So this is an unfortunate issue. Transparency is a first moment decision. That might be the first thing that the new council should do, is just move to set it into place. In fact, if I'm elected, I'll request, because I have family that's not from here, I would request that it be broadcast on video and available on YouTube. So, try to get it done even before. There's no reason to not. There's also no reason to not Zoom or some equivalent and then post on YouTube or some equivalent all the meetings, planning, the planning appeals board. These are all relevant things that not everybody can get to. I was just talking with somebody today about, bandwidth and being able to go to all these meetings. We all can't drop everything we're doing and go to a board of elections or whatever other meeting it is in the middle of the day. It should be available. It's obvious. But I would say even beyond that, we need the new website that the county allocated $50,000 for, that it needs to include, not unlike the city of Cambridge, the agenda items that are coming up. There needs to be more transparency. For example, Mr. Ashraf and I were on the Councilmanic Redistricting Committee this year. I had the privilege of serving as a chairman as we tweaked the county lines to hear the new census data. We weren't even allowed to show a map during the meeting. How can you? I had to talk through the map changes, and then the line moved north. I mean, it's bizarre, and we need to push through it, and it'll be an easy fix. But I think really the real issue, and Ricky Travers said it yesterday to me, to the audience, and he said it a few months ago to me when I was asking, what's the solution? Do we need 7 commissioners? Do we need this? Do we need that? And he said, it's only as good as the personnel. That's why the real charter amendment that we need to make, and that I would pursue and bring up to the public, is one, to have a recall where you can start a petition. We cannot be held hostage by public officials for 4 years while they run out the clock, essentially for 2 years of not having an appointed county manager. We need a recall added to the charter so that they can be held accountable ASAP.
Thank you. Mr. Layton.
Thank you. I'm, of course, in favor of this amendment, like everybody else here. I have signed the petition already, and regardless of whether the petition passed or not, it would be one of the first things I looked at. It seems basic to me that we have the technology to live stream these meetings and allow people to be involved from a distance, and that we should be doing that. I mean, we have citizens that live 45 minutes away in this county from Cambridge, an hour and a half drive to a meeting twice a month. It'd be so easy just to put that online and allow them to come. And there is a little more to it, as Mike talked about, having the agendas out early and making sure people know what's on the agenda. Now minutes can take a month or more to get out sometimes. Letting people know what's going on at the meetings in a timely manner. All of that is just so important to let people know what's going on.
Thank you, Mr. Layton. And we'll let you go first at the second charter question. As you all know, there are two of them. What are your thoughts on the charter amendment regarding the county manager position that would limit the council's ability to hire and fire department heads for political or personal reasons?
So again, same thing. I have signed the petition here for this. One of the again, important things that as soon as I would be elected to county council, if I'm elected, would be to get a strong county manager in there. As a business person, you've got to have a strong leader. You can't have 5 leaders, and especially on a council where you have 5 people with totally different views, totally different objectives. They're giving totally different messages to every employee. Even in a small business, we have a family business with 4 owners, and sometimes even the 4 of us can give different messages to employees. It gets confusing to people like that, and we need that strong manager who's giving everybody the same direction. They need stability to know that that county manager is not just disappearing on the whim of a few of the council members, and that they're qualified to do that job. A strong leader.
Thank you, Mr. Layton. Let's bring the microphone back over to your right to Mr. Ashraf.
Again, I fully support the second amendment for the charter. I think we need a strong leadership in a county manager running day-to-day operation for the county. It's their job to move forward the county to the vision that has been proposed by the council as unanimously. I think it's their job to run the department heads and so on. They should be held liable to the county manager, not to the individual council member. And I fully support that amendment for the charter.
Thank you. Mr. Beverly.
I also support the amendment to the charter. And as Mr. Detmer was stating about possibly doing a charter amendment for a recall, I would have to be in agreement with him. But when you're elected to office, you're not automatically you're just in for 4 years and you can just do whatever you want. If you violate the U.S. and state constitution, the oath of office you've taken, then the residents have every right to remove you from office and not let you finish your term. It's not a seal the deal 4 years. I can do whatever I want. You're subjected to the will of the people. And I think it's unfortunate that we've had to get to this point to where we have to make a charter amendment. But if elected to office, the first thing I would do is have a county manager appointed or hired.
Thank you. Mr. Bradshaw.
Well, again, I wholeheartedly support the amendment, and I signed a petition for this amendment to be placed on the ballot in November. Interestingly enough, the language is already in the charter, though a little bit vague, but it's there, but it's being ignored. The county manager is supposed to be in sole charge of the day-to-day operations and the assets of the county, buildings, employees, etc. The council only needs to be involved if there's an issue that's going to affect the running of the county and the management of those day-to-day assets. The county manager is the one that is in charge. And as a business, if you look at it like that, the county manager is the CEO and the council is the board of directors. So the board of directors may give guidance to the manager as to how certain things should be done. But again, it's up to the manager to make sure that the county is running as it should.
Thank you. Mr. Detmer.
Well, I disagree with everybody up here, as I promised I would. I disagree in one component. It's very clear as day we need a day-to-day manager for the $70+ million operation. We need one. But one of the first things I would do, the first meeting, is I would seek to bring up a motion to hire an interim county manager, not unlike the city of Cambridge did. That way they could find someone immediately. They could, that person could then, when you get a rental car, you walk around and you check for dings and dents and you do an inventory of what's right and what's wrong with the situation. In the same way, as a member of a new council, I would want that administrative review that's actually in the charter that should be done every 4 years. I'd want that instituted right away and by somebody who could actually be somewhat objective and not tied in with this whole situation. So I would seek to hire an interim manager to give us that stability, that day-to-day operation that we need and we expect, and that apparently we all do agree that is appropriate, but that we can not worry about if we hired the wrong person, if we, we're so desperate, so much happens to Dorchester County. We're desperate, we just jump into the next thing. I mean, there's no need to be desperate. Let's be deliberate. And I think that when we're deliberate and we establish for people that, hey, here's, we put in policies that would not just be, hey, we have a county manager and here's what it does. We don't have performance reviews. We don't have performance reviews for department heads. Department heads don't review their people. How can they give anybody positive or negative feedback? We need to have a chain of command in the military. I promise you that you better take your concern to your corporal or to your sergeant before you go talk to the lieutenant, or it's not good. And that's what needs to be understood here is that, that chain of command goes up and down. It works in two ways. And those administrative developments and changes, healthy organizational structure, that would last and be a stability that people could count on. More about that in a second.
Mr. Detmer, we have a related question, which you can take first. What do you think is the cause for the large and unusual turnover in department heads in the county in recent years, and how do you plan to address it if elected?
A lot of these questions segue, and this might be the best segue question. I'm grateful to have gotten this one back to back because in talking with county staff and department heads and just in getting a sense of what's going on is that we don't just need the 3-2 vote fixed. It's not just the 3-2 vote is going the wrong way. It's a culture. It's a mentality. It's a mindset that needs to change. It's not the billet of being a leader. It's leadership. It's vision. It's things that are intangible, and remember the Titans, attitude follows leadership. And that's what's needed is to go and articulate to department heads, hey, we intend to create a stable environment. Do you have everything you need? As I said before, what is it that you want? What is it that you need? What is it that your department can do now? What is the mission that we're asking from planning and zoning? What are we asking for from tourism? Do they know? Do their employees, do the 15 guys on the roads board, what's their mission? Do they have clear expectations? And if we instituted a system of organizational leadership and management, which we don't have to reinvent the wheel to do this, then people could get feedback. We could say, hey, you're doing great, or hey, we need to tighten it up in this area. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Layton.
Well, certainly, yeah, this ties right into that last question. I think that the main problem is that the county is a business, but it's not being run like a business. You don't have anybody giving the leadership. Employees, they feel uncertain about their jobs and their priorities. They don't know what they should be working on, what's most important, and nobody's giving them that clear direction. You really see it in the results of what we have. One of the biggest complaints I get from people is the time it takes for permits, whether it's electric permits, building permits, all kinds of things. Because our county employees are uncertain of what they do. They don't move without somebody telling them because they don't have the leadership they need to make those decisions and move forward in a timely manner. It hurts us as taxpayers because we're paying taxes and not getting the services we need. We need that leadership that gives them the direction, tells them this is how we're going to get it done, and then we get things done more efficiently.
Thank you. If we can beam that mic over again to the right. Thank you, Mr. Ashraf.
I think we need a mechanism and set of matrix where we can hold these people accountable if something is not going right. It's not just if somebody's feeling or they're not agreeing with someone, they just or they should fire somebody. I think there should be set of matrix where everyone should be held accountable, and there should be some appreciation if things are going well. So we need to develop a culture for teamwork and so on, where everyone feels thriving, and stability should be bringing to the county. I think that is something we should look into in our next term if get elected. I think we need to bring a set mechanism where everyone should feel safe, and they should feel like they belong here, and they should be held accountable if something goes wrong, that they shouldn't or not following according to the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Beverly, you're up.
I would have to say that after talking to many employees of the county and county residents, it all boils back to the same thing everybody's saying, is that we don't have proper leadership here in the county, especially with the county manager position being left open so long, having so much turnover rate with department heads, that we haven't had any consistency at all. So the employees in this current economy and job market, they just leave because they're not going to sit here and deal with the turmoil or the extra added stress in their line of work.
Thank you. Mr. Bradshaw.
Well, again, it goes back to leadership, and we have bad leadership and a ton of micromanagement, and that results in a toxic work environment. So yes, if elected, I too would get a county manager on board that would start to set the ship back right and get the employees the direction they need, and get the management the direction that they need, and do an analysis on the work environment. And that way they can present issues and the ways to solve them, so that we have a safe and healthy work environment and have buy-in from not only the department heads, but the employees. That's what we need.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. And if you can take us into the next question, please describe your understanding of the current state of our emergency medical services division and what you would like to see change, if anything.
Well, again, it's a bad work environment. They're short-staffed. They're working a lot of hours, being held over for shifts, and it's creating burnout in the employees. And it could lead to something bad in this county. Being overworked, overtired, you could make that decision that could affect somebody's life. And again, it requires getting a leader in place that has the employees back, doing a compensation study to make sure that we are paying these people as best we can with counties in like demographics. I mean, we're not going to be able to compete with the likes of Anne Arundel and PG County for paramedics, but we do have a lot of their employees work part-time for us because they live here in the county. So again, putting leadership in place that's going to have the employees back, but yet at the same time, hold them accountable when they need to be.
Thank you. Mr. Detmer, you're up. Oh, yeah, this is a question about your understanding of the problems with the Emergency Medical Services Division and what changes you'd like to see, if any.
In talking with people, thank you. In talking with people that have left and talking with people that are there, it is definitely a negative feedback loop. You know, they're short-staffed, so they have to work more. They're held over more, which in other counties is essentially unheard of. And it feeds a negative feedback loop where the problem is just perpetuated. A lot of obviously what we're cycling back to here is a leadership question, and making sure that the upper and mid-level leaders have the ability and the clear expectations and the supervision to make sure that they can pass on those clear expectations and that good supervision down. So that is part of it. But I think that we need to also evaluate what these responders are doing, you know, whether it's the 911 center, whether it's EMS. You know, I was contemplating this the other day. When somebody dials 911, a lot of times it's the worst moment of their life. And, you know, I was grateful. All the hard times I saw in Iraq, I left it in Iraq. You know, our police, our fire service and EMS, they don't have that luxury. So we have to support them. We have to understand it's not just another job. And we have to break that feedback loop. We have to tell them that they're appreciated. And, you know, sometimes this is life or death. What we're talking about up here is it's not just about business or organizational health. It can be mistakes that are made. It can be where the ambulance is going to be sited. That's a problem that has come up with sighting. We need to have the data about where the calls, where if we're going to build stations, which by the way, they've allocated $1 million for 2 EMS stations. I've spoken out again about it in 2 of the budget public hearings. And we need to know what the rationale is if we're going to be placing it somewhere else. We need to know what the amenities are there for people, what the training is. We actually have good equipment. We've got great people. And they need to be supported. We need to make sure that they're paid competitively. Maybe their retirement needs to be evaluated. So we're definitely in an arms race with competition, but a lot of people want to be in Dorchester County. All of us here do. And a lot of people want to work there. So we should try to foster that.
Thank you. Mr. Layton.
There is nothing more important in a county than protecting its citizens. I mean, we've got a large spread out community where when people have an emergency, it can take a while to get there. And we need to make sure we've got enough staff adequately trained to get out there and help people. And that's certainly not the case right now. We've got a shortage of staff. They're working long hours. They're not getting everything they need. I think it starts at the top, certainly with the county council and the decisions they've made right now. One of the changes that I would make, and as good a job as she does, our department head for EMS is a part-time person. She has another full-time job somewhere else, and we need a full-time person in that position who is concentrating on it and making sure that EMS is taken care of and a full-time responsibility. I'd like to see that get done. Then we can get those open positions, adequate personnel training for everybody, and make sure that our EMS is the most important.
Thank you. Mr. Ashraf is next as soon as we get the mic over to him. Thank you.
I think we need to reevaluate the compensation packages for the EMS. I think considering the other counties, I know our fiscal position is not right the other counties, but there are other ways we can work around. I think developing a strong relationships with here, like with the vocational centers, high school, and the universities and colleges we got here on Eastern Shore. I think keeping those young students retention down here and creating a cyclical process where when the older people are about to retire, we have a young generation of flow coming into our system. So it's a continuous and stable system. I think those are the things we should take into look into that. And I think EMS is such a critical operation for the county. We should consider this issue very strongly, and if get elected, that would be one of my first priorities, getting resolved this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Beverly.
Well, obviously, I have very strong opinions about this, being a firefighter EMS myself. I can honestly say that it's not really compensation why people leave this line of work. We get into this job understanding that you're not going to get rich off the job. We do it because we like to do it. There's many people in this county that actually do it for free. And in my opinion, unfortunately, since we have lost our inpatient beds, we've lost the hospital. We currently have a freestanding ER, but unfortunately, if your family's in cardiac arrest, if they're stable, we're going to drive right past that building and go to Easton. So with the transport times, regardless of how many ambulances that we get, we're still going to have long transport times, unfortunately, currently. In my opinion, a lot of the people that work EMS that I talk to say that they would like better living conditions while they're on their 24-hour shifts, and they would possibly like a better retirement. They would like better leadership, and they would like better equipment to perform the job. And they also have expressed that obviously the line of work that we do, we see a lot of things that people don't normally see on a daily basis. And they really would like more support from the county council and all levels of government within the county when it comes to mental health. They really do suffer a lot behind the scenes, and a lot of people don't see that.
Thank you. No, Mr. Beverly, hold on to that microphone. We're moving over to another aspect of our first responder capability. The county council recently voted to pay increases for sheriff's department staff, but excluded the deputies that guard the courthouse. What are your thoughts on that decision?
Well, I have an opinion on that. Having a family member that serves here and protects this city, it's in my belief that anybody that wears that badge performs the same job. So if we're going to give a raise to the sheriff's office or any police officer in here in the county, they all get the same raise. It's really simple because they're required to act when they're in that uniform, just like the other individual is, if they're on the patrol car or they're standing in front of the courthouse. It's pretty straight to the point on that.
Thank you. Mr. Bradshaw, you're up.
Well, again, it was a bad decision to exclude a certain few from the sheriff's department from their raises. By the Maryland Constitution, they are required to do court security and serve papers, but they also have arrest powers. So the fact of the matter is that these deputies who are guarding the courthouse also have to go through the same mandated training as the road deputies. And given the fact that if need be, they're on call 24/7, just like everybody else in law enforcement. If they were needed, they would have to respond to an issue just like their colleagues. So they should not have been left out. If one deputy got a raise, they should have all gotten a raise.
Thank you. Mr. Detmer.
This is an instance where I would, as a county council person, because I don't know, it could really, if you think about it, it could go either way, that I would ask the head of the agency or the department head for their advice. And I would go with the recommendation, unless there was something really compelling that said otherwise. In this instance, the head of the agency would have wanted to have the raises. But let's dig a little deeper than that. And I believe that they're deserved. Let's dig deeper than that. It's a shame. We should be ashamed here in Dorchester County that this is what we're talking about. We're on the cusp here on July 1st of Senate Bill 896 going into law that takes away what was the gold standard nationwide of how to handle complaints on officers. It's completely removing it. I assume it was well-intentioned, a well-intentioned move from our Democrat state legislature, but it is going to completely upend the way that officers are disciplined or the way they get due process. Talk to an officer and ask them how they feel about the looming possibility of qualified immunity being taken away. If this is what our county council is talking about, bickering over whether or not certain people should get a raise, we're in trouble. We're facing a world in which local police officers involved in a chase, they're chasing a suspect like happened this week, who is allegedly involved in a burglary, and they're chasing that person. That person flips their car and dies. It could be counted as an in custody death. These are the issues that our county council needs to be ready to go to bat for in a very serious way. Because I will promise you, all the good men and women in law enforcement who in their right mind would have a job where you would stay in that position and risk you personally being sued. The county council has got to be looking past these basic low-hanging fruit issues. There's a big picture out there. And again, Dorchester always lets stuff happen to us. I'm tired of it. We can't let stuff just happen to us anymore. We have to be ready for challenges. We have to be ready for opportunities. And in this case, this is a serious challenge we've got to be ready for.
Thank you. Mr. Layton, please.
Thank you. Certainly from a high level, anytime that you single somebody out, you're creating animosity and divisiveness. It just doesn't make sense. People need to be treated equally. It's only fair. I don't see why they would have done this for any reason. At a more detailed level, as many people up here have said, those deputies take the same oath. They're putting their lives on the line just the same. If something happens in that courthouse, they've got a duty to stop it, and they've got duties outside of there. They deserve the same treatment as everybody else.
Thank you. And Mr. Ashraf, you will get the last crack at this question.
I think in agreement with everyone else here on the table, I think there shouldn't have been any discrimination. Everyone has taken the same oath, same training, and they are there to do the same job. It doesn't matter whether they are on the road or in the courthouse. I think it should have been increased across the board.
Thank you, Mr. Ashraf. And since you went last at that one, you get first as the next one. Switching topics, how do you see yourself as a defender of property rights? How does that relate to things like renewable energy, tidal rise, rails to trails, and things of that nature?
Sure. I think we should, as a society, respect individual rights and individual property owner rights. But as a community, if something can be done at a larger level that should be beneficial to the whole community, I think it should be an option or should be out there as an incentivized for those particular owners if they want to avail that option. If not, I think if they don't want to put any solar panels or anything like that on their field, or we shouldn't tell any farmer just living on the farm. I think I wouldn't support anything that someone coming to my property and telling me I shouldn't do that. I think we should respect the individual property owner rights. But again, like I said, if anything can be done at the larger community level, that should be beneficial out there. We can propose that as an option out there, but I think we shouldn't enforce as a government.
Thank you. Mr. Beverly.
When it comes to being a defender of private property rights, Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution states that you shall not be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law and or just compensation. It's really important to stress that going to district court or eminent domain does not automatically qualify as just compensation or due process of law. So when it comes to the solar, the tidal rise, and all of those things, in my opinion, if there is something that needs to be done at a larger scale because of the changing climate, et cetera, that it would still have to go through the due process of law before we would take anybody's property, because we represent the people, and private property means private property.
Thank you. Mr. Bradshaw, please.
I personally have always been a defender of property rights. If the zoning allows your project to happen on your property, then you should have the right to proceed. But there does have to be parameters to work in. I mean, you don't want a big box store sitting in the middle of a farm field out in the middle of, I'll say, Reed's Grove. It just doesn't fit. One of the hot button issues has been renewable energy, solar panels especially. I too have share concerns, but at the end of the day, what you have to face the fact of is that if it is a utility grade project and the Maryland Public Service Commission wants that project, they can override local zoning. As a matter of fact, Kent County went through this not long ago with a project on the outskirts of Chestertown. They wanted to stop the project. They sued in court. The Maryland Public Service Commission won, and they appealed it. And again, the Maryland Public Service Commission won because they said that project was needed to generate electricity to go into the grid. It cost the county somewhere between $60,000 and $70,000. That being said, it's going to happen. We need to work to make it as palatable as possible to the neighbors of these areas. Property owners should also have the ability to protect their property from tidal rise and the rails to trails that's mentioned in this question. Create them where feasible to do so.
Thank you. Mr. Detmer.
I view myself as a defender of property rights, but also as a defender of the public good. And, you look at a situation with these, the proposed salmon farm, the salmon factory that was going to come to Horn Point Road. You have an Amazon warehouse sized building there. 300 high-end jobs would be great. This, renewable, wonderful food that has all the approvals and everything would be great. But, is it in the character of the neighborhood? You have these massive industrial sites. They're not solar farms. They're solar industrial facilities. And by the way, they will be coming more so. That legislature over there in Annapolis mandated that by 2032, 50% of all energy in Maryland be clean. They're not going to put any more industrial sized solar fields in Baltimore City. They didn't put up those big poles on Route 16 because the old ones needed replacement. They put them up there next to all those transformers for a reason. And the Public Service Commission does have a lot of sway. And I was there when when the Planning Commission redid the comprehensive plan and took longer because they were really, really trying to walk a very fine line with restricting the solar as much as reasonable, or the ability to restrict it, while not pushing it past the ability to have any claim with the Public Service Commission. I'm not a lawyer, but I would want you to know that if you vote for me and it's time to fight for or fight against a certain project or a certain thing going somewhere, that I will listen to you and I will go to bat for that. And I'll do it ardently and fiercely as I can.
Thank you. Mr. Layton, please.
As a property owner and as a farmer, I'm a supporter, ardent supporter of property rights. Farmers spend, especially farmers, because that's what I'm familiar with, spend their entire life working to purchase this land. This is their livelihood. It's what they've spent their entire lives doing. And for many of them, it's their only retirement that they have. Agriculture is changing. The world is changing, and there's different things that they need. But I defend a person's right to do what they want on their property and be able to do that.
And Mr. Layton, hold on to that microphone.
Yep.
Switching topics again, what is your understanding of affordable workforce housing, and how would you support additional development and tax incentives for the creation and or redevelopment of affordable workforce housing?
So I think we could use affordable workforce housing as a way to support some of our essential employees. Our county does not have a lot of money to spend on that kind of thing. But I think if we looked at tax breaks possibly for teachers, EMS, police, as a way to incentivize them to live and work here in Dorchester County, and a way that we can make that more affordable for them, I think that's a win-win for us. It would be great if we could do more than that. If we could get federal or state funds, we could look at revamping substandard housing or converting commercial property. But I think tax incentives are something that we could do with the money that we currently have.
Thank you. Now we're going to beam the microphone over to the other side. Mr. Asher, please.
I think tax incentives would be one of the major thing we can do here in Dorchester County. I think we should have some breaks for the taxes where we can have these development for our essential workers, like Mr. Layton mentioned, and also we can also take a look into the fees and other stuff that these builders have to go through. Maybe giving them a break there or something like that, where it would be helpful for our county resident. I think that would be another thing we can take a look into that.
Thank you. And Mr. Beverly, please.
My understanding of affordable housing, it really depends on the definition, because like some people would say it's for fire, EMS, and nursing to find ways to get them into home ownership. And then some others would say that it's more of a tax incentive thing. So for example, I used to work for Cambridge Commons here in Cambridge, Maryland, as a maintenance man, and it was a tax credited property where based on your income is what you would pay for rent. I myself am not a supporter of expanding that into the county. I think that we should take the housing that we already have and improve on it, and then create ways to assist people to show them that at some point they would want to leave those apartment complexes and positions to improve their quality of life.
Thank you. Mr. Bradshaw.
Well, when people say affordable housing, it often gets confused with subsidized housing. There's a vast difference. I would encourage developers to consider the growth areas in the county and see what kind of tax incentives we could give them to build these houses, and not only build, but to repurpose buildings into housing. When the housing market bubble burst in 2009, and I came on board in 2010, the county did suspend the excise tax and the impact fees, as did the city of Cambridge, to encourage building and to try and help support these builders who wanted to come and build housing here in the county. And that suspension was carried on a number of times. Now, right now, I do not know if the county has reimposed that or not, but that, again, would be something to look at to encourage builders to come here and build housing that homeowners couldn't build, and as well as tax credits for EMS providers, law enforcement, and teachers even.
Thank you. Mr. Detmer, you're next.
You talk to realtors, and as a licensed real estate salesperson in the state of Maryland, because it's interesting to me, I do talk to realtors and they say, we don't have enough inventory. We haven't built anything since the housing bubble burst. We don't have enough. So we need to build more. I think we do that by having a smoother system, like at planning and zoning. And one of the things that we could do is, as a council, is tell planning and zoning that, hey, it's a priority to, have things be smooth and very clear. I think that in the review of fees that I talked about, honestly, some of these fees may need to go up. There's a piece of land right down the road from me for sale for $51.5 million. I'm may have passed a salesperson's course, but I'm not a developer, but I know enough to know that they're going to have to sell a lot of lots to, if they ever are going to develop that. Yeah, it's right next to North Dorchester High and Middle, but that's going to, tax the infrastructure there. I promise you Centennial Road's not ready for that level of traffic. Maybe it will be one day, but maybe the fees might need to be there. I think we should be cautious about too many tax breaks. Although, and I will say this, and it's come up this council thing, this council's term, and this is something that we should address right away. We are here talking about responders and stuff. Is if you're an active duty volunteer firefighter, you should definitely be getting a property tax break. It came up; it's pennies on the dollar for what service they render. Maybe we could look at that for EMS, for 911 center. That's a conversation we should certainly have. But workforce housing, it's like when you start a fire, you have to have the 3 parts: oxygen, fuel, and heat. And you talk to people, you talk to economic development people, and you need a workforce, you need businesses, you need education, you need housing, you need all those kind of at once. It's a county council's job to be efficient, number one, and to be open and willing to grow or learn, but also to just do little things to foster each of those things as best they can.
All right, Mr. Detmer, you get first crack at the next question as well. What long-term solutions do you see to better protect Dorchester County and surrounding areas from the increased threat of climate change and flooding?
This is an issue that should be looked at holistically. And this is one of those things that I advocate spending that ARPA money on, and also going out there and doing the legwork. When I was covering the Cambridge shoreline resiliency, one of the things they said is when you have all your ducks in a row, and then there is, God forbid, but it happens, we live on the East Coast, there's a large weather event, then FEMA and other entities like that are more apt. They get a pot of money that they then hand out to fix what's wrong. When you already have your ducks in a row and you say, hey, we've already done the research, here's what needs to be fixed, here's what needs to be remediated, that you're much more likely to get it. When I went down to Tangier Island and I talked with the mayor, he told me, he said, hey, we got they rip-wrapped the whole shoreline. There's a whole shore break. He said, now we need to get the eastern shore side of the island done. Why aren't we asking for that? We have not just the shoreline washing away in many parts of this county, which needs to be addressed, but we have communities there that are withering on the vine. We have marsh that is migrating. We have black rail habitat that Matt Whitbeck at Blackwater told me in his career he expects it to be gone, not even in our lifetimes. We have a unique opportunity here to ask for things. This is a gorgeous, beautiful, unique county. And we have all this marsh and we have all this shoreline. And this has been said recently with the Fishing Creek shoreline study that was done, that we could have unique opportunities to say, hey, can we come pilot different solutions here? So this needs to be a holistic thing. It needs to be done. And we need to be asking a lot of people for help, because that's what other people are doing. And the county washing away isn't helping anyone, isn't helping them either. And we also need to foster and maintain those communities down there and let people continue to live down in the southern reaches of the county in places where shoreline is. It's a beautiful place and we need to preserve it.
Thank you. Mr. Layton.
So recently, Hooper's Island did a great evaluation. They did a study and they looked at what is going to happen to us in 30 years. What is this island going to look like in 30 years if we don't do anything? And what are some of the solutions that we can do and how much do they cost? We need to have that information. We need to have it for everywhere along the shore, all the different islands and everything, because the water's rising. I mean, there are a ton of islands that have disappeared in the Chesapeake already, and we can't save them all. So we've got to be able to look at what can we save and how do we put together a plan to get the money to do that, and what can't we, and what do we do about that? So we've got to have those studies and have that information now.
Thank you. Mr. Ashraf is next.
I think that is one of the serious issue we need to take a look at fastly and more seriously, because if we're gonna have this peninsula, that's where we're gonna have our homes, our businesses, and everything here in this beautiful county. I think we need to work with our federal legislature delegation and state delegation to get those funding. And I think doing those studies and having a data-driven and scientific knowledge out there and help us use that to bring solutions to save our county, I think this is something we should need to act fastly.
Thank you. Mr. Beverly.
When it comes to the tidal rise, obviously, like Mr. Layton says, it's obviously rising. We're also sinking at the same time, so that doesn't help in certain parts of the county. In my opinion, it's the residents of Dorchester County wants to be honest with them. And like Mr. Layton said, that we have to be honest and tell them that if it's not going to be feasible to save, In my opinion, though, we should do everything that we possibly can. But I don't think we can play God and, trick nature either. Climate change is cyclic. One time the Chesapeake Bay was, according to scientists, was a river. And today it's obviously not. So I think it's really important that we do everything we can to stop the erosion for as long as we can. But then at the same time, be honest with the people and say at some point when it's not feasible anymore.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw.
Well, just to kind of put things in context, I have a couple of studies at home, one for the Honga River watershed and one for the Fishing Bay watershed. In the past almost 170 years, the Honga River watershed has lost nearly 5,000 acres. Put that over on the Fishing Bay side of Dorchester County, in that same time period, they've lost not quite 1,000 acres. So what's the difference? Well, the west side of the county that takes the brunt of the northwest storms in the Chesapeake Bay is more uplands, and Fishing Bay is more tidal marsh. We have a perfect opportunity here with funding having been approved for the Mid-Bay Islands project, the restoration of James and Barren Islands, for the county to work together with the Port Authority, Army Corps of Engineers, and federal and state legislators to incorporate ways to not only, restore these islands, but at the same time incorporate barriers. Just an example, to put a jetty, a stone jetty off of Charity Point, which is just as you come across Fishing Creek Bridge on the bay side, run that jetty out there for however long it needs to be. And interestingly enough, what fills that one channel in is all the north to south flow of sediment coming from Taylor's Island. That would actually catch all that sediment, and in years to come, the land would accrete back. So this is the perfect opportunity to work with the Corps, the Port Authority, and federal and state legislators to make the western side especially more resilient to tidal rise.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. Please take us into the next question. Are you ready? Mr. Bradshaw, how do you plan to involve residents in the decision-making process of the county?
Well, having been in this position before, and in another lifetime, I served as a volunteer firefighter and had the opportunity to greet former President Reagan on one of his visits to Blackwater Refuge. And I admired President Reagan. There were a lot of people that didn't think he was an intelligent man. But the fact of the matter was he was smart about a lot of things. But he surrounded himself with people that knew what he needed them to know in the time he needed them to know it. And in my time before, if there were issues that affected the ag industry, the seafood industry, or even the citizens themselves, I always went to those people and asked their opinion so that I could make a better, more informed decision. And if elected, I would continue that process. The people need to be engaged, and you need to take into account people's opinions one way or the other to make a better, more informed decision that's going to have long-term effects on the citizens of this county.
Thank you, Mr. Detmer.
I definitely think that the transparency plays into this. And, I've talked about a number of first meeting things. This is going to be a long one, folks. In the first meeting, I would motion to direct staff. You believe our county, it's 2022. We don't have an official Facebook page. That's like not being in the phone book 30 years ago. So to have official social media, I think that all meetings should be broadcast publicly and should then be available to watch via video. I think that our GIS mapping, where internet is, where internet isn't, where ditches that need to be dug are, where roads that need to be repaired are. I think that the request list for public works, if you wish your project to be public, why can't we see a list of what's there? Why can't there be a public meeting where in whatever region that you can go and they have a big map on the wall and you say, here's some magic markers, draw the ditches for us that are the worst. Why do we have to reinvent the wheel all the time? Why not ask the people that are there on the ground? Why don't we have for planning and zoning, for the health department, if you're trying to get a lot perked, Why don't we have, like with the ER, like expected wait time? Why can't we see that number when you walk into planning and zoning? It should be customer service based. And I think that when you give people that data and you say, hey, we're building 2 new EMS stations, but here's the heat map for the last year, the last 2 years, the last 3 years, and the last 5. We're not EMS experts, but we're smart enough to read a heat map and tell if the station is in the right place, generally speaking. I think you got to, whether it's with students or whether it's with people, that you have to treat them like an equal. And I think the council articulating that and saying, hey, we need your participation. What roads in Crochron are the worst? Because that's what we're going to dig this week. And why not? We need to involve people in this process like that.
Thank you. Mr. Layton.
So everybody needs to be able to be involved. 3 things that I would do to make sure that people are involved. First of all, is just being open to talk. Even now, my phone number, my email address is on every card that I give out. I am always available for that and would always be available to that for residents. Having a Facebook page for myself, but for official use, letting everybody know what's going on in the county, what are we working on, what happened in meetings, what events are happening in the district. And a way, again, if somebody wanted to get a hold of me, they could use that. But mostly that's to get information out. But I think something I've seen others do that I think could be very effective is doing kind of office hours, as my daughter called it, where I would be available both online and in person twice a month. You can come find me. Hop on Zoom. I'm always there. If you have issues, if you want to know what's going on, I'm happy to meet twice a month, every month. And just let people know what's going on. Hear from residents, let them know what we're doing. And it's a way to make sure that those lines of communication always stay open.
Thank you. And Mr. Ashraf, you are next.
I think the one of the best way to get citizen engaged in the county council process is heavily using the social media out there. It's not just the Facebook, all other social media apps. You got Snapchat, Instagram. You have to be updated with 21st century. I think that's one of the most important thing we can use. And then transparency that we were talking about earlier. I think that's another thing we can use to engage our citizen in this process. And I think, like Mr. Layton said, having office hours and driving through the different parts of the county where we can be accessible to the citizens of the county and go out there and listen to their issues. I think that's one of the most important thing. And then I think the third thing we can do is having open commentary periods and circulating the agenda for the council meetings at least 1 week before, where each citizen have a chance to look at the agendas and the issues we will be discussing, and then the post-survey commentary period where they will be giving their feedback that will be helpful for us to making decisions on those important of those issues. I think that would be beneficial as a county council.
Thank you. Mr. Beverly?
To have the residents more involved with the county council and the county government as a whole. I would say get them more excited to be involved with education on the campaign trail, talking to residents. To me, it's amazing we live in a country where I can even sit here and do this. People have sacrificed their lives for this. And unfortunately, not a lot of people even understand the process of even getting involved or even filing to run for office. And it's my hope to be able to show the public that it can be done. And it doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter where you come from. You can do it if you live here in the county or anywhere else in the state or this great country. But like they said, with the social media concept, that's a great idea. I think it should be done. It's a very simple thing. It doesn't even really cost us anything. That's cost your time. But anywho, yeah, I think we live in a great country. Our government, when it presents itself as a representation of the community, if the community is not involved, then unfortunately you get what we're seeing across the country. If the community is involved, then we'll be successful.
Thanks, Mr. Beverly. You're first on the next one, too. The question being, how important do you feel it is to have a strong working relationship with the state and with federal legislators and their staffs, and why? Fair enough. We're running short on time. So,
Well, obviously, it's a pretty, in my opinion, a simple answer. We live in the state of Maryland, so obviously we need to work with the state government and the federal government. We have 3 levels of government for a reason, for multiple reasons, from protecting our natural rights, but all the way down to everybody has different powers. Obviously, the county council doesn't make legislation. Our job is to defend the rights of the people of this county, but we need to work and present our needs, our opinions, or even our beliefs to the state legislator, so we don't just sit here on the wayside and get ignored when the state's just passing something that might be really beneficial for certain parts of the state, but it's very unbeneficial for the Eastern Shore and especially Dorchester County. When it comes to the towns, to me, it's obvious answer. You work with the towns. The towns are their form of government, but we're all one community. We have to work together. We can't ignore certain towns based on their geography, location. Everybody needs to be treated equally here in the county.
Thank you. Mr. Bradshaw, you're next.
The relationship between state, county, and federal officials is vital. The federal and state officials can help the county receive funding for projects such as broadband that, as you've heard tonight, is desperately needed. We do have broadband in the county, but it needs to be run to the outliers. And of course, with the Mid-Bay Islands project, the county needs to work with the federal and even the state officials on this, because it needs to be guided such that it's not only environmentally beneficial, but it's also economically beneficial to the watermen and the recreational boat users of the areas that this will affect. I have to say that during the last 4 years, even though I was not a sitting council member, because of the relationships that I had created in the previous years with state cabinet members and federal and state elected officials, they contacted me because the council would not return their calls or their emails. There were a number of times that people would call me out of frustration, wanting to know where to turn and how to get there. And I gave them the best guidance that I could. So again, if elected, I would create and reforge those relationships so that the county and its citizens could benefit from it.
Thank you. Mr. Detmer.
You know, in my coverage of the county council and then following it after my beat got changed, when I declared my candidacy, 2 moments really stand out about this. Two anecdotes. And one was I was covering an Eastern Shore delegation meeting, and a state lawmaker, no, I'm sorry, it was a judicial proceedings, and it was a golf cart bill for the islands, Taylor's and Fishing Creek, to get golf carts there, like in Vienna. And Addie said, this is our highest legislative priority. That's what the county council told her. And the Judicial Proceedings Committee, I'd like to think it was laugh with, but they're laughing. They're laughing at us. That was our highest judicial committee legislative priority. It's not that it's not important. It's not that it's not fun. I'm in Vienna all the time, and people love to ride golf carts there. It's great. And they should be allowed in Taylor's Island too. Why not? But that was the priority. And then another moment that happened a couple meetings ago, I won't forget it. They said, okay, the congressional directed spending deadline for earmarks for our U.S. senators is tomorrow at midnight. And they said, anybody got any ideas? And we're talking about stuff that you have to have documentation, what I've spoke about with that ARPA funds and what we should be prioritizing and asking department heads to do is developing what are needs, what are requests. Can we do that? Can we dig out all the ditches? Can we fix these roads? Can we protect the shoreline? You know, when I was talking with Senator Cardin on Tuesday about Cambridge's sewer pumping station that was built in 1911. And he said, with $500,000 of funding that he secured through an earmark. And he said, it's not, I think it's more than $4 million to fix it. And he said, the thing about this is that it then gets, and again, it pains me as a conservative to say, but it gets the wheel in motion. I said, it sounds like it's a foot in the door. He said, oh, it's more than that. So we need to have a great relationship with those federal and state legislators. It's a world we live in. And if we don't recognize it, we're going to pay.
Thank you. Mr. Layton.
So, of course, each level of government goes up. The towns are part of the county is part of the state's part of the national. And we have to communicate with each other. Mike kind of stole my example there, but I was also at that county council meeting, and it is such a shame to have a senator say, "We've got money. What do you guys want to do?" And they had no answer at all. Preparation, communications. You don't get in that situation, and it was. I saw in the paper last week, Cambridge got funding from that same thing for their sewer system. Dorchester should have been able to take advantage of that. We focus on the money because we need money to get projects done, but it's not just about money. Legislation, working with them to get legislation done that we want, and also the federal departments. I mean, we see that a lot with the dredging projects and the shoreline projects that we need done, working with the Army Corps of Engineers, highways. We've got to work with state and federal in a lot of areas, and we just need that communication to make sure that we're getting things done.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Ashraf, your ideas on federal relations.
I think it's really important and vital to have a stable and working relationship with our federal and state delegation, because it's not just about the funding. It's just also other things like Mr. Layton was mentioning about those departments that come out here and do the services for us. I think having a working and stable relationship with the both delegation, I think, and having our voice be heard both at the state and federal level, I think would be beneficial to our residents. And I think the other thing we should take look into that, like someone political affiliation doesn't determine whether we want to work with them or not. I think difference of opinion should be respected, and we should find a way to work with all of delegation that we have here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ashraf. You get to go first on the closing statements we're going to move to right now.
In the closing statement, I would like to say, as you have heard from all of us, I know more of these guys come with more experience than I have, just considering my age and the other circumstances. I think it's time to bring a change to the county council. We need more fresh and young leadership. It's all about leadership and vision that would move forward this county into the future. And I think having that strong and a better vision for this county, I would ask and respectfully ask you to consider voting for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Beverly, please.
Again, this is a great opportunity to even be sitting here today. And I would just like to tell the residents that I'm really grateful that I was invited here today. I'm the independent on the ballot for District 5. I'll be on the general election ballot in November, regardless of the primary. And I just want the residents to know that I know what the role of government is here in this nation, and that's to protect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness of others. That's my core value. And that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Bradshaw.
Well, as a lifelong resident of this county who grew up on a small family farm, worked in a crab picking house, worked on the water, spent time in the woods, logging, and in the sawmill, typical Dorchester County boy, I know how inculcated these industries are to the not only the heritage, but the culture of this county. I'm a historian and have studied this county greatly. I've studied its history, both good and bad. A lot of it I know like the back of my hand. And having been in that seat before, I know how the county government is supposed to work. When I left the last time, it was working great. And right now it's broke. I have a heart for this county. I have a heart to serve the citizens of this county. What do I get out of it? Nothing, the expenditure of my time, but also the satisfaction that at the end of the day, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, that I've had the opportunity to serve the citizens of this county. And as my ancestors would say, leave it better than you have it for the ones that come behind you. Regardless of your political designation, when you walk through that door of that council chamber, you leave it at the door. You work for the citizens of this county and to help make life better for this county and make it run, as a lot of people said, as a business. Yes, basically government is a business and it should be run as such. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight so that you can hear my viewpoints on this. And I'm always around. My wife and I had the old Reeds Grove store, and the job I have now allows me the opportunity to work from home. So I'm available by Facebook, email, phone call. If you have a question or concern, I'm there to listen. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Mr. Detmer.
Thank you again, everybody, for your interest, and thanks to the fine gentleman up here. Again, this is great for the voters, bad for all of us. I hope that tonight that I've demonstrated that through what I do and who I am, that I have a finger on the pulse of what's going on here, that I have a firm grasp of the issues, that I have thought extensively about this and have unique, innovative solutions, that I have an open mind, that I've developed connections already within the community in various places. I've have broad experience with some of the unique opportunities like CWDI. I've been to a lot of CWDI meetings. I have unique opportunity with understanding what the issue is. I have lengthy conversations or several conversations with the state's attorney's office and with law enforcement. I've stood on Greenwood Avenue next to officers that are standing over evidence as it's being collected at a murder scene. We have a variety of challenges. We have a variety of opportunities. And I hope that tonight that I've shown you that I have the grasp, I have the knowledge, I have the passion, I have the fire to do this, that I have the heart for service. You know, I mentioned that not only did I graduate 25 years ago tomorrow, but 20 years ago this coming week on June 10th, I went and I stood on the yellow footprints at Paris Island. And I thought I knew, like with most momentous things, you think you know what it's going to entail, you know, whether it's kids or, you know, things like that. You think you know, but you don't fully know. And I believe that I have a firm grasp, and I pray for the strength and the ability to do this if I'm called. I do feel a call to service, and I've been very grateful. One thing I've found is not only is this county beautiful, but it's full of really good people. And I have a lot of gratitude for having met them. And I would ask for your vote. Please visit detmerfordorchester.com if you want to help me in my quest to do the business of the people. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Layton. You're batting cleanup.
Okay. First, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and or watching tonight. Voting is one of our most important rights and responsibilities, and education about that decision is essential for making the right choice. We've heard a lot of great ideas up here tonight, but great ideas don't get things done. An idea is only a start. You need someone who can follow through and get things done. My history has shown that I'm a person who can do that. I've taken over and continued on a family business that's lasted for over 70 years through 3 generations. I've created a business that 20 years ago, most people wouldn't imagine they'd ever see, a winery in Dorchester County. I've worked with and led numerous farm and community organizations that have worked to make this community a better place. I've done enough to know that I can only make one promise here tonight. That's that I will always work together to find the best solution. I'll work together with our partners in the county, the sheriff, the Board of Education, the fire departments, the towns, the chamber, the farmers, the watermen, to find a solution to our problems. We're a large rural county with a small population and limited resources. The answers aren't always what we want them to be, but when we work together, trying to find common ground, trying to find the best solution to our problems, our lives are all better. I will always be available to individuals and organizations to listen and to talk about finding a better solution. We all here have the same goal. We want to live out our lives here in Dorchester County, feeling safe and having the resources to enjoy our lives. We get there by working together and keeping these goals in mind. Thank you all. Please come out and vote on July 19th. Change doesn't happen without you.
Thank you, Mr. Layton, and thanks to everybody at this table. Appreciate your energy and your passion, all of you.